Well, hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of Harebrained Games. Today we're doing our Christmas Spectacular. That's right, every year I do a list highlighting some of the games I think you may be interested in for the holidays, or interested in giving, or particularly of importance, interested in receiving. We have, my usual take is that I divide this list into three different categories based on interest, like on a reception level of the people. So say for example, family, occasional people, you know, if you're going to meet at a gathering and you decide that you have, you know, some people that might not know intricate details of games, but you want something pleasant anyway. So I have that, and then I'm going to break it up into avid gamers. These are people that generally play games, you know, after work or on the weekends or such. And then I've got, of course, my hardcore games for people who need to frown like this and play their games with deep concern. Anyway, the one thing I did do is I skew this list more towards newer games and older games, but I don't avoid using older games if I find that they turn out to be a great recommendation. So without further ado, let's get on to the show. Alright, first off, we're going to do family casual games. Now, one of the games that's been on the list probably 3 years in a row now is The Crew Mission Deep Sea. This is a trick-taking game where you have 3 to 5 players, I believe, and you're going around and you're playing cards. It's your typical stuff, like someone leads, everyone throws the right card in, high card wins, etc. Except the twist here is that this is a campaign of about 50 missions all taking place under the sea. Before each round, each person is given an objective, and they must complete that objective before they're allowed to, in order for them to win. So it's not just simply high card, high card, high card, high card, buy card. It's, oh, you must be last doing this, or you have to get rid of all your even number. I mean, just some crazy things. They're very simple goals, but when you add the fact that everyone has to complete them, and that everyone kind of has to work together to make sure that they're all doing it in a way that everyone can win. A lot of fun. I mean, I'm growing more into a trick-taking guy, but this is generally not kind of my vein, but I really like this, and I would not turn down an opportunity to play it. Next, we have a game called Longshot, the dice game, but I can't recommend this one because it's not readily available. One of the things I also like to do in this list is try to make sure that games are readily available, and if they're not, then I'm kind of being mean, Mr. Grinch, by recommending them. So, Longshot, the dice game was a summarized down version of Longshot, the board game. The thing that it does is that it's a roll and write that doesn't stink, or it's a dice and write, or whatever, where you are betting on horses, but you're also filling in blanks for, like, you know, if you've got your stands, your amusement stand, you've got points for a variety of different things and configurations. So it's more than just pure, I bet on this race, if I win, I win. Because I can't recommend that, I actually found a game that's even better that just came out and is way cool if you're into that sort of thing. It's called Ready, Set, Bet. This is probably the closest you'll get to an actual raucous, crazy, wild horse racing game. It's real time, or it's kind of partial real time. You play it with the app. You don't need to have anybody manning the horse race, but if you're not, you can also have a player rolling the dice. And what you're doing is everything's happening in real time. You're placing your bets in real time. You see the action going, and you're like, okay, it looks like horse number 3 is going to win. Ah, darn it, you put your chip on that one, on the big bet. Now I only get the second big bet. Not only is that going on, but you're also betting on a variety of different other things. Like, say, if the blue horse beats all the red horses, you can put something there. And there's so much. The first time you play it, you're overwhelmed. But after that, you're like, this is fun. You got your, like, tension. And the thing is, the time is finite. So you can play with the full amount of players. It's very finite. In fact, I recommend you do, because it's finite. You're putting your tokens on the places. Everyone's going around. You're like, hey, get on. Like, hey, I got there first. Great Christmas spirit. Anyway, Ready, Set, Bet. Next, we have kind of a combo plan. I always put this on the list because I think as far as simple games that you can teach easily, even if they're not the most astounding, is Splendor. Splendor is a game where it's basically pattern matching. basically pattern matching 5 different colored gems, and then those lead to you to have cards, and those cards make it easier for you to buy other cards, and eventually you get to a certain amount of points. Now, new on this front, if you're playing 1 or 2 players, is Splendor Duel. Splendor Duel actually compacts the experience down to you and me as a duel. It adds a couple things as far as like a grid of gems and kind of how you can manipulate and move those, so it tightens the space for playing against someone else in a way that turns out to be better. They don't always do that. There was a game, Emotep, that was great with multiple players, but then they did a dual version. I thought it was dull, not dual. Anyway, then we have what has hit me this year. This is a game my wife has asked to play multiple times over the year, and it's called Micro Macro Crime City. This is the Where's Waldo board game that you probably didn't even know you needed. On this game, you have a vast, huge, like, paper wall, and I'd actually put it on my wall, and in that you have these clues. There are murders that happen all in this city, and little pictures and pieces, and you have to piece together what happens. There's a series of clues like, okay, and the thing is, it goes backwards, so it's your job to kind of recreate the scene of the crime. It's because you already know something happened. Like and the details on these are, the amount of detail in this map, massive. Everything takes place on this big, huge whiteboard, Where's Waldo kind of thing. And what it'll do is say, well, oh look, someone got murdered. Well, how? What happened? And so you work backwards. That's what makes it work. It's not like, go find this, go find that, and then it's more like, something happened. It looks like, Sir Reginald was killed with a yodeling flounder. How would he learn to yodel? And then you look back and you're like, oh, look, there's a guy going into a store that sells yodeling gift cards. Okay, I'm keeping it fictitious because I don't want to give it away. There's about 12, 13 different murders that take place here, and you play them in packets. Once you're done with that, they have a next version that's come out that we haven't started on yet, and then there's a third version in the trilogy coming out that I'm told, and this is very clever, actually has a murder that takes place across maps. So, Micro Macro Crime City, anybody can play this. You can play with as many people as you want. It's all about finding clues. Some people will. My wife and I like to split the board up. We're like, okay, this half, if I see something go into your half, then you take over the looking from there and stuff. You could play it by yourself too, but honestly, it just doesn't seem as fun. Then we have Trekking Through History. There's a lot of trekking through the national parks, trekking through the stars. Kidding. Trekking Through History is very simple, but it works. You are trying to piece together chronologically certain cards that are being played, and when you're doing that, you're trying to build kind of bonuses. You have special cards that you fill out bonuses for based on each, like an event in history will say, move down the yellow track or the blue track or whatever. It's very simple. The pieces are phenomenal. It's not a very tense game. You're just kind of like, if you get to a point where you just simply can't extend your timeline, you close it up. That timeline's going to earn you certain points, and you have to start a new timeline. Highly recommended. I think it's just a pleasant game. On Amazon, I got it for like $44.72.576. And next is Seven Wonders Architects. Now, Seven Wonders itself I've had for many, many years, and I ranked it very highly, especially for larger players. Seven Wonders Architects has done something even more remarkable. It's distilled down the game such that you can teach it far more easily and still get that nice kind of idea of quickly building your empire. Cards to the left, cards to the right. It's still drafting, like pick a card, play a card, build up your stuff. And I think it does it really well. We've had, Seven Wonders. I still would bring it out, but I just haven't brought it out lately because Seven Wonders Architects pretty much satisfies people's needs for that kind of game. So, recommended. Next up, we have Meadow. Now, Meadow is... you're going to be wowed by the artwork. It's beautiful. It's just beautiful. And you have rows and columns of cards, and you're pattern matching, set matching kind of thing going on, but just the beauty of it is phenomenal. If you've not played Everdell, which is another game that has some of the most vivid, rich, just fantastical artwork you'll ever play, Meadow easily keeps up with that, and it's available now, like $54 is what I was seeing it for. So, and then of course there's Dominion. Now Dominion is Dominion's just there. It's been there since 2008, I think, and so it has a long, long history of just being a very simple game where you can play with the most easy cards, and you're like, play cards, buy stuff, play cards, buy stuff, play cards, buy stuff. It's kind of a rhythm. But as you get more of the expansions, and I think I now have all 15. Don't have the one for next year, but I have all the like we're talking mega stack of games, and you can get really immersed into it. But you can also just buy the first edition and play the game. My wife and I have played hundreds of games of just the original because it's easy to get into, it's easy to teach once people understand what's going on. It's a lot of fun, and then you know that there's pretty much no end because you can just keep buying different games and this stuff, and they add more mechanisms, some of which I think might not be as fun for, say, my wife, who's like, I just like keeping it simple. I just like playing the simple cards. I don't want to track too much, but you can get into that as you get some of the expansion packs. So, and then we recommend Fairy Tale Inn. This is a 2-player game that's probably the only version of Connect 4 I can stomach. Fairy Tale Inn is you have certain cards and you have certain chits, and you're playing these chits and you're trying to connect up. Literally, it's a literal Connect 4 kind of thing, but actual gameplay is included in the box. People are staying at your inn. Who's next to who determines some things that happen. You get certain patterns and whatever. And so it's a 2-player only. I got it for $14 last year, but I think it's risen up in price. But if you get a chance to try it, please, 2-player game. I think it's amusing enough to try. And then we have So Clover. So Clover is a huge hit these days. It's been listed in a lot of favorite top 10s. It's a very strange game where you have 4 sets. It's like a 4-leaf clover. You've got 4 different cards, and you have to write words that match up to those clues, and then everybody has to go try and look at those 2 words you wrote and find the right card that matches it. A lot of fun. It doesn't take a lot of brain power. Yeah. I guess if I had any others not on the list, I did play a 2-player game called A Little Wordy from Amazon, and I think this is for it's almost, you're trying to guess someone else's word, but you have to use special abilities on your cards to do so. It's not like Hangman, where you're like, give me an S, give me a T, give me another S. More it's like, hey, you can guess, you can ask about vowels, A Little Wordy, it's like $14.95, not bad. And finally, Neanderthal, poetry for Neanderthals. If you want kind of a raucous game that just, like, you have to emit poetry in grunts and one-word things, and if you mess up, there's a inflatable bat where they get to hit you on the head with. Not necessarily my style of game because it can get crazy, but if you're kind of like, hey, I like this kind of zaniness, and you're in the right group, Poetry for Neanderthals is for you. And that's it for the family occasional games. Now let's talk about Avid Games. Okay, Avid Games are games that people who've already generally immersed themselves in board games at some time or another have been able to play and understand. So, having them ramp up on a rule set is not as much of a challenge as it would be if you're just someone sight unseen going, oh, cool. So let's start off with Caper Europe. Now, Caper Europe is a 2-player only game. It has a Despicable Me kind of vibe, and that's why I think my wife and I like it, because you're going to pull off the greatest heist Europe has ever known. You lay out your cards, and there's different heists and different things that you can do, and it's up to you to decide what equipment to use, what special powers and abilities and gear and gadgets to employ when you're trying to go on this heist. Very, very fun. The components are just elegant. It feels like one of those fancy chocolate boxes where all the chocolate is wrapped in individual bows and crap. Next is the surprise of the year for me, something I did not expect, and that is E.T. the board game. E.T. the board game is from Funko Games. They generally do lighter fare that kind of attracts the general audience. They don't usually go too far off the beaten path of complexity, but there are exceptions. E.T. is one of the more complex games to determine what to do and how to play, but it's absolutely like, it will make you want to go play the game. All the artwork is so evocative. It's hand drawn, so it's not just pictures from the movie, but it's hand drawn. There's so much in this game that matches E.T. There's so many things going on that make you, as a group, it's probably one of my favorite of the year as a group cooperative games, trying to help E.T. get home, you know, avoiding all the officers and being on your bikes. Everything that you remember about E.T., the board game, is in here, which is a huge surprise, because I played one of the worst Ravensburger games, Space Mountain, which was just utter garbage, and then I went to E.T. and I'm like, holy smokes, whatever design team did E.T., keep them on it. So E.T., go home. Next we have Picture Perfect. This is another oddball game. I think it was out last year and this year as well. In Picture Perfect, everyone's going around the table and they're trying to create the perfect picture of a family gathering. And of course it matches the holidays. But the trick here is that, you know, based on clues being sent around, that certain configurations are not going to fly. You're going to get extra points if Aunt Mabel gets to sit next to the poodle. You're not going to get points if Uncle Mavis is next to the poodle. You want someone to be able to be close to the table, far from the table, next to this person, but not next to. You know, it's basically like your typical family gathering where everyone argues and then you eat, except that you're creating this picture, and then you take a picture of it, and then you go down this score list and go, okay, you got this, you got this. It's really clever, and I think it deserves to be reckoned with. And speaking of reckoning, there's a pirate game, and I love pirate games, called Dead Reckoning, which I recommend for for people who are into pirate games like me. I love pirate games. Pirate. I did a top pirate games in the past, so you can check that out if you want to know my blatherings on that. But Dead Reckoning has a card. It's one of those games where you have cards and you have sleeves, and as you put different bits and pieces of cards in it, it forms this sort of composite card. And so you're going around, you're attacking things, your ship combat is wild and wacky. It's just fracas. This fracas of entertainment. If you get a chance to try that out, you're probably going to be pretty happy. It's a nice, I'd say it's pretty pleasant, actually. You know, no one has to walk the plank per se. Next we have Dune Imperium. If you get a chance to even play the base game, you're going to be happy. This is a very smooth, very easy, it's a worker placement with a deck building aspect, but honestly it just kind of amalgamates into a nice Dune experience, especially if you are familiar with the Dune series, but you don't have to be to really enjoy it. And in that game, you're placing stuff, you're getting water, you're getting spice, you're using that, you have a little combat. It's not really deep and detailed, but just the flow of it and the cards and the special abilities make it one of my favorites. I still bring it out and I still like it. They have 2 expansions since, and the second one hasn't arrived yet. The first one is here, and it's pretty good. So next we have a game that also took me by surprise. It's been around for a while, but I've only embraced it recently because I finally understand what it was trying to do. It's called Brian Boru. Brian Boru is a trick-taking area control game. You're not going to hear those 2 terms put together very often, but if you have 3 or more players, you're kind of going to like this, I think. The trick-taking aspect is that when you win tricks, you are going to be able to take control or manipulate areas of the map of Ireland. So, you know, Brian Boru, the king, and you have different cards. Those cards have special abilities. Even if you don't win, you're still going to have some special thing that happens that you can do. So you're always going forward in some degree, and you're building area control, and you're trying to basically control as much of the map as possible to win the most points. Brian Boru the art style is very distinct to me. It's a very easy game. As far as trick-taking games, most of them are just mind-numbingly simple, and then you have things like The Crew. This takes it up a notch because of the area control, so I wouldn't necessarily say, hey, you know, bring this so that cousin Mabel and second cousin, you know, Maybelline can play it. So I don't know what I have against Mavis and Mabel, but my grandma's name was Mabel. Anyway, and then if you have a chance to check out this game that just came out this year, it's called Sniper Elite. You may have played the board game or heard of computer game or heard of the computer game. Sniper Elite is basically walking around being a sniper. Sounds fun. I mean, who wouldn't want to be that at Christmas? Sniper Elite is a fun deduction game where one person is the sniper and up to 3 other people are guards going around trying to get to the sniper. It's not your typical hidden movement game like some of the others. It very much works off of the vibe of the computer game, and it has some nice stylistic touches that make it very entertaining for people. You definitely want the most expert person at the game to be the sniper until everyone learns it, but there's a lot of fun to be had, and it was a surprise this year. If you haven't tried Gloomhaven, and there are people in this world who haven't gotten the train case that's this big, but there's a game called Jaws of the Lion. I got that as my Secret Santa gift from Board Game Geek last year and ended up playing it, and I think it's a nice distillation of the big box of Gloomhaven, the 50-pound box, down into a sizable book style of game. If you want to get involved in a nice role-playing game, and one that can give you that meaty role-playing game but in less time and less table space, Jaws of the Lion, it's a Target even. You can get it, and works great. Like, I think it's a great distillation. Again, it's pretty complex in some ways for combat, but not for like hardcore board gamers or whatever, but for casual people, like, they'll have to learn some things about, oh, like, this is my hand, the top card, the top of one card and the bottom of another card are what you do on each turn, and so you have some interesting choices to make on how you manipulate your cards based on what character you're playing and going through a dungeon. And the story is, it's decent. I mean, it's not going to shock you in a Jamie Lannister kind of way or anything, but it's going to at least entertain you, I think. And finally, if you have not played Twilight Imperium, fear not. There is a game called Twilight Inscription. This is a game that looks like it belongs in the hardcore category, but in honesty, it doesn't. It can be taught fairly easily, pretty quickly. The key of Twilight Inscription is it's a roll and write game of incredibly high complexity, in contrast to other roll and write games where you're going across the universe and you are building up your civilization in various ways. You've got combat, you've got your economy, you've got your exploration, you've got 4 different placards that you can write on with I think they did a really good job researching how to make pens for this that aren't going to smudge, so that your whole game is ruined because you sneezed at just the wrong time in the galaxy. And if you have a chance to try this out, I think you're going to like it. I played several games of it. I don't know that long term it's going to be one I play all the time for months on end, but I would still pull it out and play it, and I think that it has some very clever mechanisms that it's based on Twilight Imperium, this massive star civilization expanding, exploring, exploiting, exterminating game, but it distills a lot of it down into a nice 90-minute kind of affair. So anyway, check that out. And now let's get to my hardcore games. Okay, hardcore games. These are games that are deep, intricate, detailed, lots of rules, and just crazy fun. And these are ones that you're going to go like, yeah, like we play games for days on end. The world just melts away. The first game, if you can find it, and unfortunately it's harder to find than it used to be because I took too long to get this list out, is Stars of Icarios. It is a massive, epic, grand exploration where you are going off through missions. It's a story-based narrative, so it's not a free-form game per se, but you have so much leeway in how you handle the storyline. You have your ships, and you have ship combat that's very similar to like X-Wing versus TIE Fighter, or X-Wing miniatures game. And so you're going off on these missions, you're getting into these crazy fights with there's so many varieties of enemy units and so much in the way of how you can manipulate them. You've got your crew, you've got your ship abilities, your crew abilities, you've got crazy upgrading is satisfying, and then you've got your land-based stuff where you go off and you explore the land. That's a little weaker, but in general, if you want this epic feeling of a space opera narrative, Stars of Icarios is the baby for you. Next is A Battle Through History. Anybody who knows me knows I love Sabaton. A Battle Through History doesn't look very complicated per se once you set it up, but it is pretty complicated to understand how you actually go about winning. Sabaton is a hard rock, heavy metal, never to be outdone band that has songs based on history, wars through history. And so you're literally moving gears and battling through history across various different ages and eras, and utilizing some of the technologies in those eras to build up your army, and we have victory points. If you can find a copy, you deserve a copy, and that copy deserves you. So anyway, Massive Darkness 2. I have the full Kickstarter version. It's about 2.5 feet high of boxes, but it doesn't have to be that way. Massive Darkness 2 is the Diablo computer game of board games. A lot of times you get dungeon crawling games or games where you're going into a dungeon and you're fighting and all that stuff, and they really have lots of details, like just a nudge of this point or that hit point or -5, or slash your damage by 0.5. Massive Darkness 2 throws all that away and says, let's just have fun beating the crap out of stuff. And so you get the best feel of being able to go feeling powerful, upgrading in powerful ways, fighting through mission after mission, and beating up a lot of monsters. Then a lot of monsters show back up. It's a madcap, Keystone Caper kind of version of a dungeon crawling game, and I highly recommend it. The next game is from GMT. It's called Great Battles of Julius Caesar. This takes years and years and years of previous games of Julius Caesar done in a series, in the Great Battles of series, and creates one of this just law. It fixes stuff, it cleans stuff up, it gives you map after map after map. If you want a meaty ancient warfare game, this one will not disappoint you. The manuals, the rule sets, the variety of things, crazy details, and amazing feel of just being in the middle of a battle during those times. Just the historical research detail alone is profound. How much they put into it. So Great Battles of Julius Caesar. Then we have Mosaic. Mosaic it's a 4X game without really much in the way of battles. So if you love expanding, exploring, and building up a civilization, if you liked cultural victories in civilization and you didn't care about the military stuff as much, then Mosaic is for you. It's a table space nightmare, really. It's because there's so much going on. There's so much going on in this game, and even if you get the basic version, it's incredible. Yeah, highly recommend that if you can find it. I got the Kickstarter version. It's got a lot of fancy stuff, but in general, even the basic game is just over the top production values and a great feeling of expanding. They do have a new Kickstarter for a beefed up warfare element, but we're not gonna, that's not something that's available this year. Role Player Adventures. Role Player Adventures takes the original game of Role Player, which was basically a game where all you did was roll for character and get the best character. But this is a total change to that. This was a full-on featured big box building adventure game, and the adventures really, the storytelling in this is top notch. I really like the storytelling. I'm not going to give it away, but just to say that you run into scenarios, you run into situations or encounters that come back in different ways based on your actions. It really does feel like the world is reactive to you as you go along this adventure, and the combat and kind of how you're building yourself up and building your character. It's very unique and very pleasant. So highly recommend that. I just did a review of a game called Hogs of War. Hogs of War is one of the funnest, most crazy slapstick table hog of a game. It's basically having fun going around beating each other up with planes, trains, and automobiles. Not the trains, but you've got a variety of equipment to use. You've got tons of different scenarios, tons of upgrades. This has been a year for a lot of just kind of fun stuff, fun combat that I've really enjoyed. So give that a shot. And finally, The Defense of Procyon 3. If you can get this game, I didn't do a review of it yet, but imagine playing 4 different entire games melded into one as a game, where aliens versus humans, except you have 4 different spheres of combat. 4 players can play this, and how they play is absolutely different. This isn't just you have these units with these hit points. It's like the way you play your game. You have a deck builder game. Oh, you have a you have a bag building element. It just goes crazy. If you can find a copy of this, it will overwhelm you. There's 4 different rule books for the 4 different sides. That's how different this game is. So, and that's it. That's kind of what I have. I'm very interested in the rest of you who are longtime viewers, kind of letting me know what things this year do you think you would recommend for people for Christmas, because that's what this is all about. It's about finding great ideas. Shout out to Jay, my friend up north, who kept saying, hey, you got to get your list out, doofus. And he's right. He's right. Love you, man. Alright, well thanks again everyone, and we'll see you next time on Harebrained Games. Ho ho ho. Merry Christmas, friends. I hope you guys are doing well. This is your typical Harebrained Games yearly Christmas food for thought. Have a plan before you talk, Tim.